this flow that's coming through, it's going to total up, and then there's a short wave. In addition to the short wave that's already being absorbed.
You're saying it instead of being a
The short wave that was there that provides
You guys ready? All right. Welcome to our weather discussion for this Friday, the snowiest week of the year so far. Hopefully not by the time we get to the end of the season. Today, as part of the requirement for our 751 class, which meets with 452, a couple of our professional master's students, Natalie and Derek, are going to lead the discussion. So I just wanted to introduce them and let you know why we're changing up a little bit. I'd love to change up more than that, not just with requirements next spring. So it's nice to sit down and listen to the discussion as opposed to preparing it and doing it every week. So I'm really happy to introduce Derek and Natalie, and you guys take it away.
All right, thank you, Dr. Martin. All right, so first I was going to go over just the current surface observations around the country, mainly over here in Madison. It's really cold throughout everywhere from this morning. Let's see, right now here in Madison, got 25 over 20, partly cloudy with the airport reporting snow this morning, which I believe that was, I'm sure walked to the bus stop, got a few flurries popping up this morning. Even out to the mountain west of it, they got frigid temperatures out of there towards Montana and all that, -4, over 9 out here, Midwest of what it is, and then but even through the entirety of Mountain West, just a lot of cloud cover and frigid temperatures for me. Growing up in Texas, we don't have to deal with too much cold, but I say that even down in Lubbock, we're getting near freezing today, but nothing that too frigid, at least not this early on in the year with it. Mainly want to look at over towards Buffalo, though, with all that. They got partly cloudy over with 33 over 22, so relatively humid at the surface. Also, I will talk more about what's all going on that was there. In the future, though, we can pull up the next rad images also. There is a bit of a high developed over in the Mountain West, which we will explore also too a little bit. So not much activity going on except for the current conditions going on near Buffalo and even off of Lake Michigan, hidden western Michigan, all the lake effect snow coming across there. Let's take a look at the Bentley maps, which will show kind of what's going on, why all the frigid temperatures are creeping down in. There's a good thickness gradient and jet core setting up just to really our south border on the border with Illinois is right there. And then from that, it's letting all this cold air up from the polar regions kind of creep its way down towards us, giving us those real frigid temperatures. But also come down with it is some really, some very saturated air with it, which is what's giving all these, causing all these lake effect issues, especially for Buffalo. That's going to be my main area of focus. But also up to near Labrador Sea, up to our northeast, there's a cyclone going up right here from with it, along this with these, the geopotential thicknesses gradient coming along with it. All with that, we can see with it. Let me change my plot actually. We'll go to, so there's that high thickness, which further shows that cold air coming down. You got a real nice tight thickness gradient right there, with all the cold air staying up to the north and warm air staying up here, so thermal's going along this way. And up here you can see that gradient closing in with it, and where that gradient is going to be closing in thick with the gradient is increasing, by definition there should be an increase of PVA by thermal wind. So, and that's co-located in the same region as that cyclone development, which we should expect to see a area of increase towards his also. Let's see. Yes. And
I think it's interesting from the thickness point of view here, Derek, that you're as cold in Champaign, Illinois, I mean, thickness-wise, as you are in Churchill, Manitoba. It's not much worse the further north you go, and that's a lot of miles. That's 1,200, 1,400 miles. So it's just we're sitting right in the middle of a really extreme cold pool.
That's why I say nice. I believe the high day is about 25, 27 around there. So that's why it's just giving us that nice cold pool, and the jet's kind of cutting off the rest of the country, so let them just sit on top of us. And until that high out to the Mountain West advance to the eastern retreats, it back is going to stay nice and cold here too. Also, there's nothing really pushing that air back up to the north for us. But And as mentioned, co-located where that thickness gradient starts to increase right there, we should expect to see vorticity. So we looking at that top corner right there, we switch back over, and right there is another, at the, this is the 500 hectopascal vorticity, and we have vorticity maximum right in that area located with the cyclone, which is what we should expect to see.
Can we do an overlay? Can you keep your,
Let me,
put a pointer on there or something, or maybe Natalie can switch
Okay.
back to the other image?
It's just this link right here, that right there. So, right there.
Oh, let's go back to the 500 millibar. Okay, yeah,
Almost
so.
right on top of it with this, so right in the core of that cyclone.
Keep the pointer there, though, Derek. Can we go back to the surface again? You're right, I just want to see, yeah, look at that. Isn't that something?
Mhm.
That's right where the vortex maxima is, and then the thermal wind's coming right up from the southeast, actually, toward the northwest, and that's where the cyclone's sea level pressure seems to be headed. It's up to the north. Perfect.
You can get on that sea level minimum is right there in that core, that cyclone.
While we're at it, let's go back to 500 one more time. Look at this feature over on the western shore of Hudson Bay, in the 500 millibar vortex, well to the, just north of North Dakota. No, further south.
Further south?
Yeah, keep going, further to the west.
Oh, west.
No, further to the west, right there. That big maximum in the yellow, slide your pointer right there, yeah. Now let's go back to the surface map. Look at that. That's another perfect situation, right? Strong PVA by the thermal wind, an innocuous looking little vortex maxima there in the northerly flow, but it's associated with a non-lake effect snow event over western Ontario and parts of Manitoba.
I think Maddie's gonna, or Natalie's gonna mention more on that with the forecast on that end. And then click on that last one right there. Right, and there's with that vorticity maximum, we get upward vertical motions right associated with that cyclone right over there. Let's see. And then yes, which is what we should be expected on. This is the your QG omegas.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. And then with that positive vorticity advection associated with that, we have to have upward vertical motions, and then with it we have with it downward vertical motions. We also have a small little area of upward over us, which I think is why the weather service forecast is calling for small flurries throughout the day and throughout tomorrow. So that's probably one of the reasons we have our little flurries popping up out of nowhere. But that's just local condition. I really want to talk about Buffalo, because Buffalo is one of the interesting cases. So as I was mentioning earlier, this is 850 millibar relative humidity along with the wind. And in some of these regions all over us where, as we were talking about earlier, where that jet comes down and cuts us off right here, this is all that cold air coming down from the poles and really saturated. Getting close to in high 80s, high 90s levels of saturation, which we don't really notice it because in cold temperatures, cold air doesn't hold as much water as the warm air, so 90% and 20 degrees doesn't feel as bad as 90% and 85 degrees. It's not as miserable, but these pockets of very moist air are traveling over the lakes, which because we're still in relatively early fall, not quite the winter, the lakes are still very warm right now for their time of year. I believe at 9 a.m. Eastern time this morning, Lake Erie along Buffalo was still at 51 Fahrenheit. So
10.5 C.
Yeah, about 10.5 Celsius, and then we can look at the surrounding also. But we have that cold pocket air coming down also, and then along with it, areas of high vorticity. So as mentioned before, where these vorticity maximums are crossing over to, they're cut off by that jet right there also. So they're staying to the north in these areas, and they're going across these lakes, which is allowing these vertical motions to appear over the lakes, as we mentioned before. And then, yeah, this was the NOAA report from this morning. Water temperature for Lake Erie at Buffalo was 51 degrees. At Rochester, it was 48 degrees. And we can look at the Wyoming sounding from this morning. This is for Buffalo at 12 east this morning. At 8:50, you're at about -10 Celsius. So that's creating about a 20 degrees Celsius difference, which is really impactful. All that air that's sitting right above, the warm air sitting right above the lakes gets hit with these cold air, and they just skyrocket up. And we can look at that with those very intense last race, and because of how saturated they are, it doesn't take much for them to hit that area of condensation at the LCL. So yeah, this is the satellite image taken from GOES of the near IR, and I thought it was really cool. So you can see, this the fetch of the area. As soon as it starts popping up over the lake, it gets the cloud tops and the snow bands get real intense, and they just pour right into Buffalo, just dumping snow on them right in their track. And then you can see it was it almost looks like smoke plumes from a fire originating.
Yeah.
They have their point of origin, and they just go from there. I have an image from, it's almost updated, but earlier I had an image where right here there's a little dying snow cloud right here. And as soon as it hit the lake, it just exploded exponentially. So all that cold air is getting convecting over, getting warmed up, very quick, and just really just dumping snow, making life hard on people of Buffalo, which I'm sure they don't really mind. If you talk to people from Buffalo, they're all game for the snow, big talk, but they're moving that NFL game. We were talking about this earlier. I'm disappointed because Buffalo snow games are some of the most spectacular things.
That's why you
when
watch.
they're dumping, I think this morning they were saying 2 feet of snow had already fallen since 8 o'clock last night in Buffalo, and it's going to keep going on through the rest of the day today, and even some into Saturday morning, if not, might even continue longer on that. But
Like 3 inches an hour?
it's some crazy rate. And then I also have pictures of the stadium. The Bills kindly posted their Facebook this morning. I can show y'all that also. But it's just a real interesting scenario because you got all this real cold air coming down at relatively early in the year with the lake still warm, and it's just causing massive issues, which even Western Michigan's having the same problems too. Now Buffalo's getting all the attention because they're getting, I think they're forecasted almost up to 4 feet of snow, which that'll you don't care where you are, that'll shut down a town pretty easily. But Western Michigan, they're getting a foot of snow in parts of the Upper Peninsula and even northern Wisconsin going over Lake Michigan, hitting there, and coming over Lake Superior. They're getting all lake effect. It's all from that same air mass letting it sneak down with high levels of moisture in it. It doesn't take much for it to start dumping snow on everyone.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting to me, among other things, is the fact that I don't think this is a really outright record cold outbreak at this time of year, but it's definitely notable. It's in the competition for a really strong one. But the thing that really drives the amount of lake effect snow, and Buffalo might break its record with this thing, is the perfect fetch that you have across the long axis of Lake Erie. It just couldn't be better. And it's really true over Lake Ontario as well. So up in Syracuse, Tug Hill Plateau, they're probably also looking at potential records because it's just perfectly set up. So it makes you think, it's not just how cold the air is at 850, but how's the larger synoptic setting set up the situation where the winds go straight across the long axis of the lake. Just unbelievable.
That jet core where it's at is setting up right in here, so it's just letting it go right across before it turns up north to that cyclone we were looking at earlier. This one, Alicia's map, this one, that jet core is setting up right there, so it's just following it right along up there, going right across Lake Erie right there.
Yeah,
Buffalo.
though the jet winds don't have much to do with what drives the convective snow, I wonder though, Derek, if the jet structure that's here kind of freezes in place a structure underneath it that you can see reflected in the sea level isobars. And this is somewhat unusual, perhaps. I wonder how unusual the sea level pressure distribution is in this instance of lake effect snow. So that's kind of a cool thing to think about too.
And then here is from Tropical, their total snowfall amount so far today from this point. They're up to getting that dark purple up there. You're getting up to almost 2.5, getting closer to 3 feet of snow, and that's just from 16 hours of snowfall. It started at about 8 o'clock last night, and they're getting buried in Buffalo.
Saddle Peak observation was 37 inches when I checked.
Good Lord.
Wow.
I don't even know what you do with that.
And what about Syracuse? Anybody know about Syracuse? Yeah, because Syracuse is getting hammered too, or Ithaca. Yeah.
It's all Western New York.
This is when you want to go to Cornell.
Right. Right.
Maybe it's the only time.
I was really excited for that. those things. I was curious if they'd be able to do it, but even just from tonight with that snow continue on all through Sunday, these were the pictures they have posted.
Wow.
Up. It is absolutely buried up there.
They should have played there.
Right.
Patriots went to the Super Bowl in a game like this. They should have thought of that.
Right.
Look at that. That is
And that's just
incredible.
from 12 hours, not even.
Wow.
They're just getting absolutely snow. I wonder if people look at that pressure stuff.
Man.
Go back to surface observations. Actually, look at all these shits. On that one. This was taken 60 this morning. We can go over the progressive studies.
Yeah, sea level
Yeah.
pressure just stays
It just
like
hovers
that
right there.
all weekend long.
It locks it in place.
Yep.
It's just setting up a wall and letting everything stay right there. Doesn't want to budge, give an inch to it. Just dump snow all the way. I wish it was happening over Mountain West, because then over Chris can make a trip out to New Mexico or Colorado, go hit the Rockies and go ski, but they'll get their snow eventually. They're doing good.
One thing that will never happen here is you never get a foot of snow with a sea level pressure of 1,020
Oh, no.
miles. Never.
Mhm.
And it's common here, I think.
That's incredible. This is all, I'm experiencing my first true north winter, and all through this week I was complaining, man, it's so cold, and I've just been constantly reinforced, like, this is nothing yet.
Yeah.
This is nothing
It's true.
yet. So I gotta pull my bootstraps and get with it, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun. And then, but yeah, as it progresses on, it just locks in right there. Let's see. Yeah, and then from there, that's starting to get out of my reach. I'll let Natalie start to take over on that. As we go on through the week, we get forecast for Thanksgiving and all that.
Yeah.
I'll switch
So,
over here.
yeah. Yeah, so I'm just gonna talk about the forecast a little bit. I'm gonna go into kind of this weekend and, well, oh, that's today, that's current. Yeah, so I'm just gonna talk about kind of what's going on, for this weekend and this weekend. I'm a little on right now. Okay, I guess we'll start, just looking at the upper level jets, because something kind of interesting happens. There's a few things that I'm gonna unpack, going forward through this week, but there's just a couple of interesting things that are happening this week, or this weekend. So we kind of start off just like this, just general kind of low pressures over the northeast up here, and this upper level jet that's going through. Then you can see we kind of get this short wave starting to form over the southeast, and that's going to propel the jet to kind of merge with that upper level trough, or that trough that's coming in through the northeast, and that's going to really stir up a whole bunch of stuff for the southeast and for the Atlantic coast later this weekend. Yeah, so as you can see, yeah, so we have that kind of jet core that goes over, that's on Monday. But other than that, we're gonna just take a quick look at just the general kind of circulation of what's gonna happen this week. So obviously we have that trough, that deep trough that's heading over the northeast right now, but actually, so early this week, we're probably gonna see some high pressures just kind of all over the country, especially up north. So it's going to be kind of an uneventful week for us, starting the week off, I should say. Just really kind of mild weather. We're gonna see a little bit of some warmer temperatures than this weekend. Like, I say warm, like 30s. 30s highs and in the lows 20s. So kind of more of what we were seeing for the past couple days minus the snow. But really just some clear weather. Probably some clouds, that kind of stuff. Just not a whole lot going on, especially in Madison. But then as we get later in the week, we're gonna see that trough kind of develop and come down from Canada, and that's gonna stir up a whole bunch of stuff, especially for Thanksgiving. And actually yesterday it was showing some snow for Thanksgiving over Madison, but I think that's kind of disappeared. It's gonna mostly just be rain for right now, as I believe, although actually, well, that's changed. So actually, it doesn't look like that low is gonna drop as low as I thought it was. Let's look back at the upper level trough. Actually, yeah, I think you get a better picture of it from the upper level trough. So again, that short wave coming through. Okay, that's Monday, and then as you can see, we have this kind of a little bit of a ridge that's coming through, and that's what's going to be pushing that kind of a little bit more pleasant weather, but then that turns into a trough, and that, yeah, there we go. That's where we see that deep upper level trough over the United States, that jet core is going to bring some pretty fun weather. I'm just going to...
Where do we expect a cyclone with that surface, with that 500 millibar at that time? What was it, 12Z on Thursday?
I think around that time. Actually, I have, this is the 500 millibar vorticity. This is 156, so noon on Thursday. Yeah, so you can see that kind of right here a little bit, and that's actually kind of what Derek was saying earlier. That's really co-located with that good PVA thermal wind advection. So
this is an interesting conglomeration of things at that time, it seems to me. Can we go back to the 500 millibar map at the same time? So I see this kind of as close as this model resolution will allow, and Pete knows what I'm talking about. A little balled up vorticity max just north or in the center of Lake Superior perhaps. And so then it's got a trailing strip that goes down to Oklahoma. That's probably reflective of the presence of a cold front further to the south and east at the surface. And I'm thinking, let's take a look now at the surface map again, reminding ourselves that we're over central Lake Superior with that vorticity feature. So the thermal wind is interesting. There's two components to it, it seems to me. There's one that comes all the way from southern Oklahoma, Red River Valley area. I'm looking at the 540 thickness line, all the way up to southern Ontario. And then on the northern side of this developing cyclone, there's pretty much a zonally oriented baroclinic zone, which may be frontogenetically active. And so you've got a conglomeration of maybe some thermal wind advection of the vorticity, which would help to continue to develop the cyclone to our north and east. And then also frontogenetic activity from Hudson Bay down to La Crosse, roughly, that's adding a little bit more ascent along that line. That's kind of how it looks to me.
Yeah, and actually, I should have shown this first, but this is 12 hours in advance, and so, I mean, not 12 hours. Yeah, 12 hours. This is 1:44, so this is midnight Thursday morning. So yeah, you can kind of see it right here, and then again, it's still just, and then...
And the vortex feature is over eastern Iowa at that time, right? So can we go back to the prior map that you showed, Dally?
This one?
No, I mean the surface map, yeah. So, yeah, so this is nice. Imagine a vorticity feature in eastern Iowa, and then see the thermal wind, the thickness lines coming right across northwestern Missouri, along the nose of Iowa into southern Wisconsin. That's a perfect spot for PVA over central Wisconsin, and that's where the cyclone seems to be developing.
Yeah.
But all the precipitation and cloudiness, well, I'll say precipitation, I don't know about the cloudiness, but the precipitation in the forecast is all along that warm front to the north that goes from Hudson Bay to like International Falls. That's somewhat independent of the PVA dynamics. And all the snow in the eastern part of the Dakotas and over Minnesota may also be fairly independent of that, although a little bit harder to figure out what's driving that. Yeah, an interesting event coming up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is actually like a whole lot that kind of goes into this week. Just because we do have that trough that starts coming in from the west, brings that really just kind of upper level low pressure system through the Midwest. I did want to talk a little bit more about kind of what's happening in the southeast, because like I said, or like I mentioned earlier, they have that the jet core from they have the two jets that are kind of coming together and merging early in the week, and that's gonna, plus this shortwave trough that's coming on, that's developing over the southwest, is really gonna bring some interesting weather. So they're actually expecting to get some pretty decent showers and rains this weekend, or not this weekend, later on this week.
Where are you talking about?
In the southeast.
Oh, the
So,
southeast,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's gonna kind of come in this way later on in the week, later than Sunday. I think like Tuesday, Wednesday, it's gonna come in. They're gonna get some showers, especially over Florida, and then it's gonna go into the
And that's
to
with
the
the, that's with the
Atlantic.
trough that's over northern Mexico at this time.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
trough kind of continues to move through, and it kind of breaks up a little bit, and you actually get another short wave that starts to develop over Wednesday. But we will look at the upper level. No, that's not what I want. Oh, vertical velocity. Here we go. So you have, so this is on Sunday. You have just that really high negative vertical velocity that comes in and kind of sparks some things up over over the southeast.
Can we stop at this time? This is
Yes.
kind of a nice time, 18Z on
Yes.
Saturday. A lot of vertical motion from
Mhm.
the panhandle of Florida all the way back to east coastal Texas. Some of it may be convective over the Gulf of Mexico, but I have a feeling there's something organizing that. So if we can see the, I guess we are looking at the 500 millibar geopotential. And what I think I'm seeing is a little bit of confluence in the flow. So you see the flow is from west-southwest over Mexico and Texas, and then it's from the northwest over, Kansas, Nebraska, and the confluence line, or the axis
Yeah.
of dilatation runs along the Red River and then into northern Georgia. So you're on the warm side of that confluence. We don't see temperature here, but I have a feeling that temperature is aligned such that it's colder to the north and warmer to the south in that confluence region. And so that might be what's generally producing the environment for ascent along the Gulf Coast. And then it's sprinkled with some local spots where it's convective, and at this resolution model can try to, show that. But I think the broad scale ascent is from confluent type frontogenesis. Weak though it may be, it's enough where the stability's low, like down there, to get it going.
Right. Yeah, so actually we can take a look. This is hour 36. We can take a look at, let's take a look at hour 48. And just see. Yeah, so this is absolute vorticity. So there's a little bit of vorticity kind of over the southeast at that point. There's some right there, but there's really not a whole lot of stuff spinning up, especially like in this area where we do see those a lot of vertical motion. But there is this little feature right here that I think is kind of driving it, or helping drive it a little bit.
Could we see the 1,000 to 500 thickness at the same time now? I believe this is the 48-hour forecast. That's on the sea level pressure.
Oh, no, sorry. So
Yeah, see, there is a decent
yeah.
baroclinic zone there, isn't there, across northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas. So it's not completely nothing, but it's enough perhaps to be the reason why there's some precipitation that's forecasted along the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, and if we go even further, we'll do 17 hours. Yeah, so that really, like I said, it kind of goes over into the, starts going over into the Atlantic a little bit more. So yeah, that's just something a little bit interesting that I had seen earlier from that shortwave that started to develop over the southeast. Okay, so then and that's right. I want to talk a little bit more about, or I wanted to take a look at the vorticity coming in, or vertical velocities coming in from the trough that we're going to see over the Midwest, northern United States through Thanksgiving. So you can see all this. You have a decent amount, not a ton, but a decent amount of just upwards vertical motion coming in through this Midwest, kind of a little bit north of us as that trough moves through. So this is Thursday at 6 a.m., which is, like we've said, kind of, Thursday at 6 a.m., which is kind of when we were seeing that over here. Was this noon? But same, kind of just like that same vertical velocity and vorticity co-located together with that trough. So with that, kind of like what Dr. Martin had said about the temperature, so it's a little bit of a warm front, more like yeah, so we are gonna see some, again, subjectively warmer temperatures, but again, just like 30s, 20s, probably in the lows in the 20s. But yeah, definitely gonna see some precipitation for Thanksgiving, most likely. Maybe snow, but I'm kind of thinking it's gonna be more of rain. I don't think we're gonna get that those cold enough temperatures.
What's the 850 milliwatt temperature look like at midday on Thursday from the forecast? So the purples are, let's see.
So
What's the color bar mean? No, we don't see any values. Okay, 0 is where it starts to get blue.
yeah,
So this is Wednesday night. It's already at 850, cold enough to be snowing, and if there's going to be precipitation, you just go back to the 060 if you could now, and leave it there for a second. Let's just get our bearings. Right there. So the surface cold front will be a little bit further to the south and east of where the boundary is at 850 because they slope forward a little bit with height. So the cold front will have already gone through at the surface by midnight on Wednesday. So it's going to be not only probably cold enough, but maybe just barely. But it's also going to be in the portion of the storm where there's a discouragement for ascent because you've got pretty strong localized cold advection. So that's going to work against any possibility.
yeah. So I do see that
To
now,
some
actually,
extent.
that cold front right there that's going to be moving through. So yeah, definitely at least maybe for Thanksgiving Day we might get some colder temperatures, but it will be a little bit warmer at the beginning of the week. And
Yeah, over the river and through the slush maybe, if we're lucky.
yeah, if we're lucky, I think we could probably get some snow. Maybe not a whole lot, but definitely. We'll see.
There'll be places not far from us that will have a glorious Thanksgiving Day in terms of snow. I mean, just over the border into Ontario and,
Oh yeah,
and parts of Manitoba, it's going to be
they were
pretty nice.
definitely gonna get some pretty heavy snow. That was pretty obvious, especially from what is this? Oh yeah, the 146. So noon on Thursday, you can definitely see up to the north of us they're gonna get. They have that strong vorticity that's gonna allow them to get a decent amount of snow and precip, especially like right here. Yeah. I think that's about all that I have. Just really, really just what we're taking away is, you have that high pressure coming in at the beginning of the week, but it's quickly going to turn into that low pressure system coming in from Canada, bringing in rain, unpleasant weather probably. Southeast is going to have that kind of jet core that comes through. They're going to get a decent amount of rain early. I think this week. We determined that was this weekend. Yeah, 48 hours. They're going to have a little bit of something down there.
Okay. Any questions or comments?